This is what Netflix should do. They should just go and say, you know what? These are the top 20 most consistent people. We're going to pay them 75 grand a year, plus this bonus program, plus these raises, plus these benefits. And if you're the writer and you want to get paid more, but work more like a gig worker, 2 months on, 3 months off, fight for your next gig, get it, don't get it, whatever. And you know, be a freelancer, fine. But man, I would just come in and I'd buy the top 50 writers and I'd have them come to an office every day.
Yeah.
I would give them lunch. I'd treat them great and make a campus where they felt like, man, I come here and I'm just creatively fulfilled and I feel safe. Like I get rent every month taken care of. I've got my, you know, my mortgage is like, you know, I have some amount of security.
Yeah. We have practical evidence that this is the right approach.
This Week in Startups is brought to you by Embroker's Startup Insurance Program helps startups secure the most important types of insurance at a lower cost and with less hassle. Save up to 20% off of traditional insurance today at Embroker.com/twist. And while you're there, get an extra 10% off using offer code TWIST. Hyperice. Warm up and recover faster with the Hypervolt 2 massage gun and Normatec compression therapy boots. Save $50 off your order of $150 or more with code TWIST50 at checkout at hyperice.com. And Release. Large enterprises pose unique challenges for SaaS startups. Unlock customers with unique needs for private and single-tenant hosting without the toil of DIY with Release Delivery. Get your first month free at release.com/twist.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. It's been a while, but we have to touch on all the stuff happening in the entertainment and technology and streaming space. So with me again, back on the program, Lon Harris. How are you doing, brother? Been a minute.
Pretty good. How about you? Yeah, it's been a little while.
Well, it's a little crazy right now in my world. You know, both podcasts doing really well. All In has become a bit of a phenomenon. You know, like this podcast is, you know, self-contained. It's about startups, you know, in technology, which is a, you know, very narrow niche thing. I've never had a podcast that was about essentially everything. You know, it's a little more wider, and it's strange. It's gotten so popular that it's crossed over into pop culture a bit, you know. So
certainly, you know, I think the as the All In podcast is becoming more popular, and you know, the you guys on it are touching into so many different areas and fields, making news besides just doing the podcast, that I think one drives the other.
It's now becoming a little bit like that. So yes, like Saks is going to be and Elon are having Ron DeSantis on Twitter Spaces.
Exactly.
And, you know,
I mean, that was the exact example I was thinking of. Is like, you know, guys from the All In podcast are making real news headlines. You know.
Yeah.
Beyond tech.
Beyond tech. Yeah. And you know, I'm doing a reality show, so I was meeting with one of the major streamers and one of the networks in the past week. So I'm going to take a shot at doing a reality show again around my, you know, early stage investing. I had done a show with NBC that never got on air because the person who I was in partnership with turned out to be a monster. I'll leave it at that. You've got a weird industry over there. Well, it's very strange because in Hollywood, like literally year one of going out and meeting everybody, this person was a god. And the next year, this person was a pariah, and rightfully so. So, you know, like, but I was like, wait a second, when did that happen? You guys were just literally, you know, you go to these, this is back in the in-person meeting days for reality shows. You know, we go into a major network, we go into a major studio. You know, back then, I guess there were like television production companies that, you know, would, you know, somehow be involved.
I mean, that is still,
Yeah. You go in and they would line up 15 people for this person to come out and be greeted. And it wasn't just the people in the studio. It would be the presidents of the wider, larger conglomerate, you know, the ATN or whatever of the world.
There is a
the Waystar. The Waystar CEO would come out. Logan Roy would be there.
There's a notable cult documentary about this person before the scandals. And one person asked another, they're talking about him, and they said, how much power does this person have in Hollywood? And the other person answers, all of it.
Wow.
They were the most powerful person in Hollywood at one point.
For a minute, yeah, for like a 10-year period, they had their hands
For a
in
little while there,
artistic films and the top reality TV shows, and. So it's very interesting.
A little bit of it.
But then, of course, the pilot comes out great. I'm like, okay, I'm learning about this stuff, and then it was like anything this person has ever touched is now so toxic. Burn it to the ground. Can never reference it again. His name shall not be spoken. And so, but anyway, I'm back on the horse. I got a great partner. We'll talk about that. But, one of the legendary. It was always
a good idea. Like to me, the concept was always like what Gordon Ramsay kind of does.
Yes.
Like the kitchen nightmare style of bringing the personality and the expertise and the experience, and then, helping other people who are maybe coming in, more aspiring, coming in from the other side.
That is the analogy that comes up pretty frequently. And then the show will have a little bit of a, how do I say it? Well, anyway, I don't want to tip my cards too much, but yes, it's basically around angel investing in companies, investing. So I'm getting my own, but everything was interesting was, when we had the call yesterday, I was like doing the debrief and I was like, well, how does the writer strike impact all of this? And it was like, well, that actually is in our favor in some ways, because if this is extended, reality TV got its big boost the last time there was a writer strike. But now I understand.
It's a little bit like I think the trope that is wrong, people tend to feel like the explosion of reality TV was the last writer's strike. That's not really true. Reality TV already was going strong. This kind of like expanded, it got, reality TV got a boost out of it, but it was all like American Idol was already popular. Like people already liked reality shows. It just, you got a real flood of them in 07, 08 because, production took a pause for 6 months or whatever.
Yeah. And so let's educate the audience on what's happening with this writer's strike, because it seemed like this was something that was coming. There's a deal that they had, and I don't know if it was a 10-year deal or whatever it was, but it was a long deal. It's been a while since there's been a strike.
Essentially, right. The 2007, 2008 strike kind of codified a lot of the rules that have been in place ever since. And I mean, if you think about how much has changed since then, in 2007, 2008, Netflix had just introduced Watch Now, like that. It was a brand new service. YouTube was this very new Wild West frontier. There, Hulu, I think, was 2008. So we're talking about a very, very different landscape. And we haven't figured out things like residuals and credits and all these little rules that really allow writers to make writing into a career. And I think that's what I think the most simplistic version is writers need to make more, which is true. But the real,
what does a writer get compensated? I'm just curious. Like somebody who writes on a show, what do they make? They make $1,000 a day. They make $25,000 an episode, a project. How does it work?
It used to be, if you think about like the old days, shows ran longer, and if you got a regular writing gig on a TV show, that was functionally your job. David Simon talks about this. There's a great video, The Wire creator David Simon, where he'd be like, you get your show, you work on your show for 30 weeks out of the year, and then you're off for 20 weeks, but you made enough on that 30 weeks a year to live for the whole year, and that's how you have a full-time job as a writer, and you're a writer on that whole process. You're writing the show, and then you're following the show through the production process. You're around, you're consulting, you follow the post-production process, you learn how shows are made, and that's how you become a David Simon, where you can be a showrunner, you can take the next show and shepherd it through the whole process. What the streamers came along and did, Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, all these others, they've innovated in a way. They figured out we don't need 30 weeks of a writer's time, a full 20-plus episode season. They're not all making Law and Order. Sometimes they're making 6-episode shows, 8-episode shows, shorter. They don't need writers for as much time. So what
these would be in some cases like the prestige shows, the White Lotus like or whatever.
Exactly. A 6-episode, a Severance, a Succession. Those seasons are much shorter. It doesn't take a writer a whole year if they're working on Succession, the writer's room for Succession might be 2 months. And then they banged out the 10-episode season, and you're presumably on to the next gig. But it's much, much harder, if not impossible, to build a full-time writing career out of you're now a freelancer. You're just the next gig, the next gig, the next gig. You constantly have to find the next gig. And what we're also finding is that we're not training the next generation of showrunners and head writers and producers. We're not it's not a landscape that's conducive to the next Ryan Murphy, the next Shonda Rhimes. We're finding gig workers who then come in, do a show or two, and then have to go back to Ohio because they're out of jobs. So this is essentially
capitalism at work. The streamers are more like startups. They move faster. They're nimbler. They found a new format that works better, which is prestige TV, shorter, higher quality, whatever, 6-episode, 10-episode, Queen's Gambit. They only need people for 2 months. So they're like, well, we're capitalists. We're only going to hire people for 2 months. They didn't raise their salaries for those 2 months, I assume. They wanted to capture, I guess, those profits. So
in some cases, people are making a little bit more, relative to the amount of time they're putting in. But overall, when you consider how much writers are making in the aggregate, it's even though the writing rates haven't gone down, writers are working for a lot less time. It's a lot fewer jobs to put together. So it's becoming harder to build a career, even though the rates themselves have not dipped dramatically. That's what can be deceiving when you see how much writers are getting paid. It doesn't drop off a cliff. It just stays sort of flat. But there's more people coming to Hollywood and writing all the time. So that's being spread out over a lot more people.
So there's competition.
There's more competition for fewer jobs. The jobs are shorter time. So a lot of people just can't put together a full career as a writer. Even if you could find a gig here, a gig there, there's a lot more people in that space where it's like, I wrote for this show last year and I wrote for this show in January, but now I don't have a job.
And this is, I think, kind of one of the misconceptions about Hollywood. You think everybody's out there like living in a $10 million house. The truth is that era when people were getting rich was based upon the profit sharing that residuals gave people. And people would get this nice $10K check or $20K check if their show got, into reruns or something. And you build up 2 or 3 shows in a lifetime, and now you're making $100,000 a year, $50,000 a year on residuals, and you're making $60,000, $70,000 a year on new work. You got there were a lot of writers in Hollywood that could hit 6 figures a year, correct?
Yes, and exactly what you said. The idea was, once you got that gig, once you got that plum gig, that network TV writer, like if I finally get on after years of toiling away, I land a job at Abbott Elementary. I'm in the Abbott Elementary writer's room. That's it. I've made it. That show's going to go to syndication. Once the show goes to syndication, I'm getting passive income every year from residuals. And what's happening now with the streamers is there's fewer of those jobs. And even if you get to 50 Netflix episodes, 80 Netflix episodes, well, like, what does that mean? The syndication rules don't apply. They're not transparent about how many people are watching every show. And so it's a lot harder for people to chase down compensation, even when a show they worked on was considered a hit.
Listen, I work with super early stage companies at launch, like literally year 0. They haven't even incorporated yet. And then we hit the Series A. People have thousands of dollars in MRR, and maybe they've only raised a couple of $100,000 before that Series A. And they don't have their insurance set up. And in fact, we recently had a great startup that didn't have D&O, and we had to really stop everything because they were having board meetings, they were making massive decisions, there were legal issues, and they didn't have the basic D&O insurance that protects directors and officers. So we sent them right to Embroker. Embroker is business insurance built specifically for startups. A single application will help your startup get 4 quotes for 4 lines of coverage in 15 minutes. Think about that. 4 quotes, 4 lines, 15 minutes. And they're going to connect you with one of their expert brokers for unmatched service that goes beyond your policy. We use it at launch. It's easy peasy, lemon squeezy. It's easy breezy. What more do I need to tell you? I use it. I love it. A lot of our startups use it. They love it. Try Embroker today with the code TWIST, and you'll get 10% off their startup package. Embroker.com/twist. That's EMBROKER.com/twist. And use the code TWIST for 10% off. Okay, let's get back to this amazing episode. Yeah. So it's very interesting because it does not seem like this is the lion's share of the cost of making a show.
No.
This seems like it's a small percentage. Now, I don't know what percentage the writers are of the overall production of a show, but I do know how much shows cost to produce. They cost $500 an episode to $3 million an episode. We've talked about this forever on the show. And then some of the prestige ones can even be, $5 or $10 million an episode. We've seen like the Game of Thrones.
When you start talking
and
about Wheel of Time or Game of Thrones, right? You've got to build sets in Northern Ireland or whatever.
It could be 10. I mean, I think we've even heard like Lord of the Rings was, $30 million an episode or whatever. So, it starts to get into.
Yeah, some of those fantasy shows, it starts to get into like $100 million for a 10 episode season and stuff like that, which is. But if we just go to $1 million, if you just go to $1 million an episode, you blend it all out and it's a 10 episode, there's $10 million. What could the writers cost? $1 million of that, 500,000 of it? I don't think they get some. Yeah, not even $1 million. I
probably
think it's
has 5 or 10%. Yeah.
I think we're talking about precedent. It's in addition to the money itself. I think the concern is they don't want to give in too much because, well, then SAG comes with their handout that, you set one precedent and then the rest of the streaming era is just people asking for more and they have to make these refigure these deals. I think there's kind of a don't give too much up front so that we don't set those kinds of expectations.
See, I think this is,
and
coming to it.
Netflix, the understanding in the industry that I've heard, this is mostly rumor. But what people are saying is that it's really Netflix that's the holdout because they have the most to lose. All of their shows are streaming. They're really the most committed to this mini room, churn things out quickly, make 6 episodes as a test. They don't want to have to commit to hiring every Hollywood writer like on a full-time basis and paying them all benefits like that. They're thinking long-term, like 20 years from now, we're going to really resent being in that position.
Well, and this is part of the problem with the dynamic of a union. Notice that I'm not making a judgment on pro-union or not union, but there are dynamics to each of these things. And it's not a free market right now. So you don't have, say Disney or Fox or NBC or somebody taking a different position than Netflix because there's collective bargaining going on here.
Right.
You're not having the free market dynamics. And if you look at the free market dynamics that happened between Uber, DoorDash, Lyft, Amazon, and then, people who needed workers like Starbucks or the Apple Store. What we saw over time was, Uber wanted those drivers so much and DoorDash wanted those drivers so much that they put pressure on Apple, Starbucks, Target, and Walmart to raise their offering. And then the flexibility that they offered then put Starbucks in a tough position because Starbucks was like, we need you to work like this onerous 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. Then we don't want you for 4 hours. Then we do want you to work the rush at night, whatever it was. And the market, basically now, if you look at service jobs, we have had a massive escalation in this country of how much service workers get paid. It's up in the 30s now in major cities. And the minimum wage went to 15 in major cities. Now, we could debate if that's a livable lifestyle, whatever. But obviously,
I mean, it's very hard because of the lack of transparency here, I think, is a huge issue, especially when you're talking about individuals being able to act on their own leverage. We even saw Seth Rogen a few weeks ago he was at the red carpet for Platonic, his new Apple TV Plus show. He said even he, super producer movie star Seth Rogen, he has no idea how his stuff is doing on streaming platforms. It comes out. They tell him, hey, Seth Rogen, we like the show. It did great. And he's like, okay. But he doesn't get numbers. This is a guy who used to get, he's a producer. He would get data. Yeah. Here's the theaters where Sausage Party did best. Here's the exact age demo and breakdown. And here's who went to see it Friday night versus Saturday morning.
This is a strategy too, by the way, just so you know, like being a corporate free market monster myself. I can tell you the strategy from the inside, which is if you obscurify the data and then you can, not give people, you have a leg up in the negotiation. Whereas with Uber drivers or DoorDash drivers,
that show did okay. Right.
Apple and DoorDash drivers, they know exactly how much the ride was, and there's transparency. Oh, this DoorDash was $30. They can see the receipt, and they're looking at all of those things versus each other. There are apps that tell them, hey, take this ride, do this DoorDash, do Postmates, do Uber Eats, do whatever, Grubhub. There are apps that are telling them which rides are the most profitable, right? So that transparency makes for a more efficient market. I think what Netflix and these folks should do, everybody who's involved in this, is if it was a truly free market, and being the free market monster I am and capitalist, I would look at this and I'd say, you know what the power move here is? I think the studio should break ranks. I think they should break ranks. And what I would do is I'd say, you know what? We have two ways for you to work. Here's the gig offer, and here's the full-time offer. And I would take a Toho Studios approach to this. Now, I don't know if this is legal right now, but Toho Studios, as you and I know, having both read Akira Kurosawa's biography, something like an autobiography. I think you read that, yeah? Something like an autobiography?
I haven't. I have not.
Oh, well, there's your tip. We got to read something like an autobiography. It talks about how Toho Studios, everybody worked full time. And then they would go to a mountain retreat, an onsen in Japan, and like a spa kind of place. And they would write. Yeah. They'd have the actors in the room. They'd have the directors, cinematographers come in. They would, workshop stuff. They would start building scenes. But they were all full time. And they would do this 3 times a year. They would write 2 or 3 screenplays, and then they would pick the best ones. And so Toshiro Mifune, Akira Kurosawa, the lighting person, the sound person, they all got into a rhythm together, right? This is what Netflix should do. Is they should just go and say, you know what? These are the top 20 most consistent people. We're going to pay them $75,000 a year, plus this bonus program, plus these raises, plus these benefits. And if you're the writer and you want to get paid more, but work more like a gig worker, 2 months on, 3 months off, fight for your next gig, get it, don't get it, whatever. And be a freelancer, fine. But man, I would just come in and I'd buy the top 50 writers and I'd have them come to an office every day. Yeah. I would give them lunch. I'd treat them great and make a campus where they felt like, man, I come here and I'm just creatively fulfilled and I feel safe. Like I get rent every month taken care of. I've got my, my mortgage is like, I have some amount of security.
Yeah. We have practical evidence that this is the right approach. There's a show on Netflix right now called The Night Agent. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard of it, yeah.
It's about an FBI agent. He works overnight in the White House answering this like emergency phone, and then he gets tipped off to a mole. There's a mole in the White House, and he's the alert. Whoa. So anyway, it was created by this guy, Sean Ryan, who... Yeah,
Sean Ryan did the Shield.
The Shield, right. At Burn Notice, I think he's worked on a few big popular franchise shows. So he created this one, and he came in and he said, I don't want to do the usual Netflix mini room thing. I'm sick of it. I want an old school writer's room. So he brought in a bunch of young writers. They followed it. They stayed with him the whole time. They wrote the show together. They came to the set. He showed them how to be a showrunner. He brought them into the editing room. That show is now, it's like the number 6 most popular Netflix show of all time. Like it's a huge juggernaut. They're bringing it back for multiple seasons. That's how to do it. We know how to make a TV show that people like, that's compelling. And we know how to get writers to build these careers. We sort of stopped because there's a more cost-effective way of doing it. Why doesn't Sean
Ryan or one of these major producers who makes all this money, right? Because they're the ones who really get the bang. Why don't they just take their top 5 or 10 people and say, listen, you're going to work here full time for me. You're going to write spec scripts. We're going to work on stuff. We're going to punch something up.
And
they become like a law firm or something. Yeah.
That's Shonda Rhimes' company. That's Ryan Murphy's got his 2 or 3 people that created, Dahmer with him and Glee with him and American Crime Story. And so there is, and I mean, Tyler Perry would obviously be like the biggest example of he's got his own studio in Atlanta with his own teams of people making show. So that is a model that I think is viable. You have to get to a
scale,
Bridgerton, Grey's Anatomy level of success. Dick Wolf would be another example of a guy who's got his, the Law and Order, One Chicago guy. David E. Kelly would have a team.
But I guess if they do that, then they would be breaking all the WGA rules. And so they would get
right now,
you'd have to get people to break their union rules to go work full time. So I think just giving more options to people is how business is headed. There are people who want to come to an office. There's people who want stability. There's people who want to be freelancers, people who want to set their own schedules. I think in this modern era, you got to give people an option of how they want to work. Listen, are you sore and tired all day? You're working really hard. You're probably working out. You're walking around. You're doing runs. Well, I have been using the Hypervolt 2 massage gun for weeks. It is amazing. And, I started running again. I was reading this Peter Attila book about my health span. And I was like, you know what? I got to get into this zone 2, zone 3. But man, my muscles are sore. Getting back into it when you're 50, and it helps get all those knots out. It loosens my muscles. I sleep better. And then I am just moving better throughout the day. The Hypervolt comes with 5 head attachments. Plus, it has 3 different levels of percussion massage. So you can customize it any way you like. It's super lightweight. It's super quiet. And they make a bunch of other products, heat and massage wearables for your back. They also have these amazing new Normatec dynamic air compression boots. These things are insane. So here's a call to action. You're going to love this stuff. Get $50 off an order of $150 or more with the code TWIST50 at checkout. And just head to hyperice.com and use that code TWIST50 for $50 off your purchase of $150 or more.
I think you have to have a more sustainable road to a professional TV and film writing career, because that's a high skill job. That, despite the idea of maybe we can have, ChatGPT do it, or we could just pull young people right out of film
writers
school.
Writers are using ChatGPT, right? I mean, of course, writers are using it to brainstorm, right? Just like they read old scripts.
Of course. Are people using it to knock around ideas, to outline things? I'm sure they are. I'm sure many, many people are. I'm sure it's already in use out there. Naturally, obviously, of course. I don't know how. I've tried to use it I don't know how useful it is, at least yet. Yeah. Maybe one day, new innovations are coming every day. But for right now, I think it's...
Whose dialogue whose dialogue do you think is fantastic in a movie?
I mean, we were talking about David Simon. I think it's hard to top The Wire. Like David Chase, the guy who wrote Sopranos, Matt Weiner, who wrote Mad Men, Vince Gilligan and his crew did Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
So if you were to ask it, give me some dialogue from The Sopranos.
But I mean, try it. Yeah,
around.
It's still at the level of like a very precocious child.
Yes.
Like if you asked a very precocious child, write me a TV scene, you wouldn't expect them to write you a scene that would actually be on television. If they could write you anything that was in screenplay format, you'd be like, oh my God, you're only 7 years old. That's very impressive. I think that's where ChatGPT, we're amazed that it can do it because it's software.
Yeah.
But it's not yet at the point where I would be like, this is a great scene. Put this on television. It's not creative. It's not funny. It's just amazing that a robot can do that at all, I think, is where we're at.
I mean, and I think that's where, when you have ideas, you could very quickly ask it, hey, make me a scene, a hypothetical dialogue around Tony Soprano, Paulie Walnuts, stealing Bitcoin.
I think wish. I think there's a wish that it would work that way. Like you could break writing down into a factory assembly line, and I'm over here putting the final thing together, but you've got a robot over there banging out widgets. But that's not. I do think really it's going to be. Yeah, I don't think it's how people creatively work, but I do think it's how people brainstorm. And so, I think if you think about brainstorming, if you were going to brainstorm, you would watch old Sopranos episodes. You'd pull. You might pull some scripts. And I mean, everybody, you make super brainstorming process is their own. So I'm sure it's helpful in that level for a lot of people to just, what are the 20 places a scene like this could happen? Or what are
That's
the
what I think the magic
characters who could pop up in here? Sure. I'm not.
And if you believe that, then the next thing is, do you believe, if you believe that, then the question becomes, do you believe a writer could be faster? And obviously writers are faster because of things like word processors or Final Draft, I guess, as a standard. So how much faster could they be? I think they'll be 30% faster. Now, do you want to have the same cost structure? Do you want to save money? Do you want to have 7 writers instead of 10? Or do you want to still have the 10 writers and just make better content? And since this is such a de minimis...
I think we're in very theoretical territory when we start saying ChatGPT is going to make people significantly faster at writing, because I don't think the things that would make you faster at writing are not the things that ChatGPT is good at.
Example?
Like a lot more brainstorming. You're just like we said, it's useful for brainstorming, but that brainstorming is not the time-consuming part of writing. The time-consuming part of writing is when you have your outline done and then you're sitting in front of a blank page and you're like, I have to create this world from scratch. I have to think about Tony Soprano as a person and figure out how he would express himself and move through the world. For right now, and I'm not a futurist, I can't see 30 years from now, maybe computers will get very good at this. For right now, computers aren't very good at that. For right now, computers are very good at what are 30 possible locations a Soprano scene could take place in. And it could go, oh, the boardwalk in New Jersey or
so what it's going to be really good at is, I think this is the thing they're trying to stop. This is where I think the WGA strike is so fascinating to me, is that they're striking at the exact time that this stuff is getting 10% better a week, which means every 2 months it's basically twice as good. And I think that's where
creativity.
Oh yeah, it is.
I'm not
absolutely
getting,
like watching.
Is it getting 10% better in the aggregate at everything it does a week? Sure. Is it getting 10% more funny and creative every week? I haven't seen any change in that at all yet. Not one since it debuted to today. It's not any funnier.
Yeah. So, you know, let me just share something with you here. Hold on. While we were talking.
I mean, it's like, is it getting better at taking the LSAT? Absolutely. No argument. Yes. It's getting a lot better at stuff like that. I've seen it with my own 2 eyeballs. Yeah. And I think it's getting better at conversation. Like when it first debuted versus today, it feels more organically like a real natural conversational voice that you're talking to. Yeah. I agree with that. But I don't think it's it's not a better I'm trying to share. Writer.
I just made a thing here. I'll just read it to you. So I asked it to do a Bitcoin Sopranos episode, and interior, bada bing, Tony, Paul, and Sylvia. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a good place to do it.
Okay,
Tony. What's this I'm hearing about Pauly? Some kind of magic internet money? Pauly, it's called Bitcoin. T. It's not exactly magic, more like mathematical. Sylvia, mathematical. What are we back at school now? Pauly, nah, still, it's like digital cash. It's like anonymous, untraceable, like cash money online. But Tony, sounds like a scam to me. Pauly, some people say that, but look, it's been around more than 10 years now. They say it's worth a fortune. Sylvia, who's they? Pauly, the internet still. So you're saying you can steal this Bitcoin and no one will know? Pauly, well, in theory, yes, but it's not like robbing a bank. T. It's all code, computers, hacks. You get the idea. And so
I get the idea. But that's again, it's impressive that it knows the bada bing. It knows these characters. It can do that Jersey Italian guy voice.
It knows to call him T. It knows it calls him T.
Yeah, that's wild. Like, it's a very impressive technological feat. No argument. But that's not a good Sopranos episode. If you filmed that with those actors, you'd be like, what the hell is this?
But when I look at it, what I see is like the idea is like, oh, magical internet money. Like that's a funny place to kind of like fork and be like, we could workshop that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but like, I don't know. Yeah. It doesn't have a experience in the world. It doesn't have a soul. It doesn't have feelings. It like those are the things you tap into when you're writing creatively. Not all kinds of writing. When you're writing ad copy, maybe it's going to be great at that. You know, like all different kinds of writing are different. So I'm not saying
but
this
the writers are demanding. The writers are asking that no training data will be put into AI, and that AI will be banned from the writers' room.
I think for Hollywood writers, there's 2 key things. One is we don't have to collaborate with AI. Like we're not going to be asked to like, here's a script that AI turned out, you fix it. And then I think the other thing, which is even a bigger one, is AI can't be the originator of copywritten material, which is like we couldn't ask an AI, give me 50 pitches for a new Adam Sandler movie, take the one we like, and then just hire a writer to write that. I think everybody recognizes the danger there, which is that creative people would cease to own any of the ideas. Anything. Hollywood would, studios would own every idea because they would churn them out with computers, and then they would just hire writers as gig workers to come and fix their computer pitches.
Do this a bit now when they say, we want a show that is X, and they kind of do an RFP for a request for proposal. Don't the studios say, hey, we're looking for X, Y, and Z?
Oh, sure.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely put out, like, they let people's managers know, like, we want action, comedy. We'd like it to, be this, give me a Jason Momoa type character. Give me a this type, of course.
But they don't try to overreach and say, hey, we've got a new character. His name is Bames John. And he's like
it's not
Jason
a long
Bourne.
line. because then it's who owns it, like that. And that's for money. As far as money and deals go, who owns the idea is such a huge, that's what made Shonda Rhimes is that a lot of people worked on Grey's Anatomy, but she came up with Grey's Anatomy. That's the thing. And if a computer came up with Grey's Anatomy, then nobody makes that Shonda Rhimes money.
How does this end? What do you think?
The studio keeps it.
What do you think is going to happen here? Because this seems to me to be the worst possible time.
It's bad
to be negotiating with the studios, because the studios have overspent and they're trying to make less content, right? The streaming services are losing money. We're going into a recession, or we've had this 18-month period where their stocks have been crushed. Disney's cutting costs. So this is the absolute worst time to negotiate.
Well, yes and no. I mean, for everything you're saying is true. The bottom has fallen out from the streaming marketplace. Digital ad market is crashing terribly. These companies are losing money, going out of business. AMC's in desperate straits.
Got it.
So yeah, it's the timing's not great. But on the other hand, they do have a lot of leverage right now. All of these studios recently came out with these huge new platforms that they've marketed for years, and they've made a lot of promises to their audience. I mean, the new HBO Max is literally came out yesterday. So it is a very visible time to be like, oh yeah, well, if you want content for all your shiny new platforms, you need to come make better deals with us. So, I mean, there's never
what do the writers want? Do the writers want full-time work, or do the writers want do the writers want security, or do they want flexibility if you had to pick one?
I think it's more about security. I think it's more about a lot of people are looking that there are fewer and fewer reliable full-time jobs that you can build a life off of, that you can build a career off of. Yeah. If you're 22, you can come in and work a bunch of mini rooms and make a bunch of money and be fine. But people who want to have a house and a family based on being a TV writer, it's becoming almost impossible to do that.
And I think 3 or 4 years ago was the boom time. 3 or 4 years ago was the boom time. People were just sweeping the money. I heard they couldn't get writers. They were adding writers like crazy. So it's a boom bust cycle.
There was we had a ridiculous explosion in interest in these streaming platforms that really came to a head in the immediate sort of pre-pandemic era, 2018, 2019. And now we're seeing, the inevitable reverse.
Developer talent is the most precious resource for B2B startups. You know that. And you want your developers focused on product, not on compliance, right? You want product. You want to ship features for your users. And when you're selling B2B software to large enterprises, well, you're going to need to jump through a ton of security and compliance hoops. You know that. One of those hoops, especially for large companies, is the customers want to host your software on their cloud, and you need to build that out on a per customer basis. It's a lot of work, right? B2B startups constantly face this dilemma. Do you keep your developers focused on the infrastructure, which is going to hurt your product velocity, or do you keep them focused on product velocity, which is going to delay your ability to close large customers? Well, there is now a solution for you. It's called Release Delivery. They automate the creation of enterprise-class app delivery for private clouds and single-tenant applications. This lets you deliver your software seamlessly to any customer environment. And this is going to unlock a ton of revenue potential for you. Basically, all the big fish require this. You know that. Release Delivery is going to put all the tedious stuff on autopilot for you. You can turn your ideas into apps and deploy those apps quickly and flexibly. Let Release show you the power of Release Delivery and get your first month free at release.com/twist. That's right. They got that domain name, release.com. What a great domain name. That's up to $10,000 in value at release.com/twist. Here's, all right. Well, let me just see. You said pitches weren't going to work. So here we go. We'll pull this up on the screen
I didn't say they weren't going to work. I don't
know. Let's see what happens here. We'll pull it up on the screen here. Make it 2 times bigger.
Oh,
here we go.
We did Adam Sandler movie pitch.
Here's what ChatGPT thinks Adam Sandler movies. Hollywood Handyman. This is one of the 3 picture deals we're doing with Adam Sandler. Sandler plays a bumbling handyman to the stars in Hollywood, accidentally messing up their homes, but always solving the problem in an uninspected and hilarious way. Has to navigate the delicate egos of A-list clientele. Unorthodox methods. There's something there. I like Hollywood Handyman. Surfs down.
Listen. Could a clever writer turn that into a movie? Sure. I mean, I think that's why we're having this. That's why this is such an important debate, because in terms of a log line, ChatGPT can come up with a log line.
What's a log line?
The hard part is execute. Basically, a log line is a 1-sentence description of your project. So, like, Adam Sandler plays a bumbling handyman to the stars in Hollywood. That would be the log line for that.
Oh, here we go.
Movie.
Second one.
And that's the sort of thing that ideas like that are relatively cheap. It's the execution that's everything.
Surfs down. Sandler is a retired professional surfer who must come back for one more competition to save his old beach hangout from being bought by a ruthless corporation. This is great.
I will say a fun thing you could do there was you'd obviously cast like a very good looking hunky guy to be like young Sandler, like make that the joke that you get like this Jacob Elordi 23-year-old like huge muscular guy,
90s guy just killing it, and now Sandler is Sandler,
and now he's this schlub who's Adam Sandler, and he's got to get back to right,
and you get this like chubby guy on a board doing sick moves and beating all the...
that part.
Yes, you did.
ChatGPT didn't come up with that part. I thought of that.
Yes. Along the way, he must face his fear of big waves resulting from a past traumatic event. Wow. So yes, the thing that took him out of competition was a big wave. He got dragged under. He almost drowned. He got saved by a dolphin, and now he's got to do a huge one. The help his old crew and a newcomer kid.
The dolphin is the funny part, and you just added that. Not
That's true. That's true. I'm punching it up. Me and ChatGPT.
You're punching it up.
They rekindled the spirit of surfing in the community and take the corporate giants. This is kind of like the corporate giants in, Local Hero, one of my favorite films, the Mark Knopfler soundtrack.
Well, that's the other.
It's a trope.
We're talking about this very practically, but on a conceptual level, it's the same thing. Like writers are saying, this is not original. Like the robot didn't think of that story. It's just cribbing from millions of other stories written by years and years of other writers. It's just taking tropes from old screenplays.
Yeah, but that's what happens in Hollywood. People come in and say, hey, this is Blade Runner meets The Goonies. And you're like, okay.
But they took that, they fused those ideas together themselves creatively into something new.
Museum Misadventures. Here we go. This one is interesting. This one's completely stolen. Museum Misadventures. Sandler plays a disgruntled night security guard. Wait a second. This is Night at the Museum.
That's a Ben Stiller movie.
Wait a second. ChatGPT's going to get sued for plagiarism. We figured it out. Lon and I figured it out. Listen. This is my message to the streamers. General Zaslav, Bob Iger, all of my people there. The writers are crushing it right now. They're crushing it. Man, that show Succession, I was like, okay, 4 seasons, whatever. And, and then obviously, if you haven't watched it, just fast forward 10 minutes here. We'll just keep it to under 10. We're going to go for 100 minutes like we do with Tar.
Listen.
No, but I mean, they kill Logan Roy in the 3rd episode, and you're like, well, there's the show. And I'm like, wait a second, but the show's called Succession. So maybe we'll find out who actually... it's in the name. We're going to find out who gets to run this company.
We're coming down to it now.
Now we got one episode left. And literally every week we're sitting here going, oh my God, that was the best episode ever. That was the best episode ever. No, that was the best episode ever. That was the best performance ever. That was the best line ever. This thing is going to go down as a top 10 show in HBO's history. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They're absolutely killing it this final season. The performances are just, because The Roy kids, Brian Cox, obviously they're getting a ton of praise, deservedly so. Kieran Culkin's been amazing this year. Sarah Snook's been so good. But the one who really stood out to me, Alexander Skarsgård as Lucas Matson is amazing. And there's so many levels to it of he's always playing games with people, but there is this kind of weird sincerity, this kind of creepy, oddball, eccentric,
little Asperger's-y, quirky.
He's doing
high
so
on
much
mushrooms.
Yeah, and you can see it's a very original, he's his own guy. It doesn't feel like he's doing an impersonation, but it feels like he's touching on so many. There's
a little Peter Thiel in there. There's a little Daniel Ek from Spotify. They kind of
exactly.
It's the Spotify, because it's from a Nordic country. They kind of took that, and then they kind of took a little bit of a Burning Man and wacky culture and.
He's a little bit, he's got a little Jack Dorsey. It's a little
Jack Dorsey.
It's a lot of different beats. And like, it doesn't feel like he's playing one person, but it feels like this is a guy that I could see fitting into the tech
Overall
business in 2023. Like, I understand who Lucas Matson is.
Yes.
Really good. He's really good.
They nailed Rupert Murdoch or Sumner Redstone, but really Rupert, with Logan Roy.
Yeah.
And then with the kids,
especially this season. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the kids, you don't know James Murdoch. I do. I've met him a bunch of times. Like,
I don't know.
I don't think that the kids are total screw ups. They're very smart, but they also just happen to have this iconic dad who has done things that are cutthroat. Yeah. And I mean, that I don't know who plays his brother on the show.
James Cromwell.
James Cromwell.
James Cromwell.
Whoa, James Cromwell comes in and just like dunks it on the entire cast, and then Kieran Culkin comes in and gives the heartfelt of the, like, is my dad in there? Can we get him out? You're like, that's what happens when your dad dies. You get crushed, right? It's you can't believe that's everybody's dad dying. And then you have lunatic method actor.
Jeremy Strong.
Jeremy Strong comes in and he's like, you know what? Great job. Now I'm going to come in and I am going to say, my God, I hope I have that monster inside of me. Because capitalism and getting things done and the strong man in the world is an important role in the world. And he does this whole Ayn Rand thing. And I'm like, oh my Lord, what have we just witnessed? Like, they just summed up in those three eulogies, they summed up. And I don't mean to leave Shiv out of it, but she was just heartbroken and crestfallen and, just still hasn't reconciled what it means to be a woman in this world with her dad, right? And just, that was pretty great too, but
it couldn't fit a whole woman in his head. Which is incredible.
Well, I mean, and so now in 4 eulogies, what have we seen? The entire range of humanity in the 21st century.
So hard to do too, because the whole show, we've known this is coming and it's been building up to it. To still like sort of surprises in that way. And it tied in so beautifully with the election night episode. They've all spent this whole show dreaming of becoming their dad, trying to become their dad, wanting to replace their dad. And then here's this moment of, truth where it's like, well, here's what your dad would have done. Here's the kind of person he really was. And they're facing that moment. And, do they have the guts to really go through with it? Only Roman was really ready to go through that door. The others were like, oh, I don't know. He's kind of a bad guy. And
he's kind of white supremacist.
Yeah. And Roman was like, doesn't matter. Who cares who's president? Plays. This is what's good for us. This is the play.
It plays. It's going to be ratings, and we got him in our pocket. Yeah. He's willing to play ball. The other guy doesn't play ball.
Exactly what he said. Like, what would Dad have done? That's what Dad would have done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
what a show.
So anyway, my message to the writers.
The one other one I wanted to mention, because it's relatively new still. Are you watching Silo on Apple TV Plus?
It literally just came up because one of the ways...
Highly recommend Silo.
Well, one of the ways I determine what is a good show to watch is I go Rotten Tomatoes, a Metacritic, and then I look at what trends on like the dark web, like on BitNet and not BitNet, that's the precursor to the internet, BitTorrent.
BitTorrent, sure.
And, if you look at the BitTorrent 100, which is, I literally used, because I pay for everything, I don't need to steal anything, but I get the BitTorrent 100.
Just to see what people are watching.
Globally downloading. And Silo was like 3 or 4 of the top 10. And I'm like, well, this must be really good. So I'm going to, but it's a like sci-fi, so I have to wait for my wife. That's my deal with my wife.
Sci-fi. They all live in this very elaborate underground bunker.
Right.
And they don't know, something happened, the environment's toxic, can't leave the bunker. But then it becomes like investigating the nature, who built the bunker and what really happened outside and why can't we go out?
Let's go. Love it.
Yeah. Great.
Got a little bit of Lost in there, a little bit of Lost, like we're going to reveal what happened kind of situation.
A little bit of Lost, a little bit of Severance, where it's a sci-fi mystery, and it just keeps getting weirder. And like Rebecca Ferguson, Tim Robbins, it's really good.
I think be generous to the writers and lock them down. This is my free market monster advice. I think the unions are blowing it here. The unions should go for full-time employment. That's what they should be leveraging here, is they should have 2 paths. Here's the freelance path. Here's the full-time writer path. And try to, create options for people. This is what I've learned in business. Running inside.com, running the investment firm, investing in 300 companies. I used to think like, okay, it can only be one way, and because it had only been one way. And then what you realize is after the pandemic, well, it can be a couple different ways. And if you make it so people get to choose, then they have agency. And when people have agency, then they take more responsibility and they stop acting like worker bees and they start acting a little bit more like owners. And the agency here would be, I could be a full-time writer. I can sign a 2-year deal, and maybe they're 2-year deals. I'm going to go full-time for Netflix for 2 years at this rate. And my pay is going to be spread out here. And I have to work on whatever they tell me to work on for 40 hours a week, or I'm over 75K and it's a staff position and I'm expected to put in 50, 60 hours a week, whatever it is.
Functionally this is what the writers are sort of asking for is not necessarily a pathway to making this a reasonable job that you could really work. I think the exact deal you're talking about, if you went to a lot of these striking writers and said, here's what we're offering, I think they would take it. I think that the thing that people are upset with right now is that it's not a writing career in Hollywood is not very sustainable until you get to that very, very top tier where you're Vince Gilligan.
Whoever cracks, this is my advice to the other side. Zaslav, Iger, Reed Hastings. One of you jump the fence. One of you break ranks. And you say, here's our proposal. We don't need to negotiate as a group. We're offering the full-time employment option. And then whatever you guys work out, you can work out in your own time. Whatever the freelance thing is, have at it. We'll agree with whatever you all come to terms with. But we're going to hire 100 full-time writers. And we want to have these folks, and we're giving them Disney, Netflix stock. We're going to give you stock options. And if your show is great, we're going to give you bigger bonuses. So if you come up with Silo and you work on Silo and it hits these benchmarks, you get more stock in Disney, in Netflix, which would then put them on the level. They would align these folks, the creatives, with the CEO of the company. That's what you want. That's what Apple has. That's what Google has. That's what Facebook has. That's what we do in Silicon Valley. Take a page from Silicon Valley. Netflix doesn't have to take a page from this. They need only break ranks from the WGA and the whatever the group?
They're the ones who are holding the
break ranks.
The AM,
AMPTP.
PTP, the American Motion Picture and Television Producers.
What a terrible acronym. Anyway, the studios, the streamers, the studios should break ranks. Trust me, this would be the best for everybody. The top, and you say, first 100 writers in, get the gigs. We're gonna hire great writers, and the race is on to get one of these 100 full-time seats. And then when we have overflow work, we're gonna do freelancers and let people have.
Because what you're proposing is it's very much like old Hollywood, like the studio, like RKO would be hiring like a room full of writers, and they'd be like, you're doing a wrestling picture, go write. Like you were getting assignments.
And you know what? With ChatGPT, you can catch up pretty quick because you have the ChatGPT. And then this whole thing of like, oh, did ChatGPT help me? It's like, who cares if it helps you? You're a full-time employee. Write great stuff. If you write it fast, if you write it slow, it doesn't matter. Just write great stuff.
Writers still need to have some sort of ownership in the things they're creating. Residuals. That's how you build a long term.
That's why I like stock options. Why would you want just residuals in one show when you could own Disney stock? Own the Disney stock, never sell it.
As long as you worked out some alternative like that also provides compensation, sure. Then in that case, sure.
All right, let's whip through some other news here. We also have HBO Max. It's going to be called Max.
No more. It's just Max now. Well, it's more than doubled in size because it's got all the Discovery shows now.
I like shark stuff with my kids. I like nature documentaries.
Yeah.
So that's good for me.
Literally, 35,000 hours of content in the new Max, more than double what was on the old
same
HBO
price?
Max. And it's same price. And it's, now it's got HGTV, Discovery, Food Network.
I might be down with some Food Network. Yeah, I'm down with some Food Network.
Yeah. So if you want the complete diners, drive-ins and dives, that's now on Max.
Yep.
And it's pricing is the same. So there you go.
Commercial free tier remains $15.99 a month. Ad supported tier $10 a month. They added a new tier,
and they've got
$20 per month.
New tier, with HD, so it's 4K.
Max
if you want to stream
Ultimate ad free. What does that mean?
It's you can 4K. Stream in 4K, and they have that offline. So you just like Netflix, you could download a few episodes of a show and then watch it on the plane. Yeah.
Yes. I like that.
So that's the new $20 max plan. Yeah.
Great. I love it. Great job. That works for me. I think, and I guess people are a little, some people are hand wringing about HBO Max versus Max. Who cares? You get used to it.
There was a little saltiness in general. Like they're doing some weird stuff in terms of how they credit. Like they used to list credits by like directors, writers, and all. Now they're just lumping all the credits in this like little box called creators. So yeah, you can see here like the creators of Raging Bull include Peter Savage, Martin Scorsese, Paul Schrader, who wrote it, Jake LaMotta, who it's about. Or like it's just a weird thing that writers are not super happy about.
Yeah, that seems unfair. That seems like a power move. That seems like what we call in the business a D move. Like it's a D-bag move. There's some power play there to...
Right, well, because now nobody... Who directed it? Nobody. These people created it. It's another attempt to like put all films, TV shows, YouTube videos, Twitch streams. It's all just content now. It's not, like they don't differentiate. So people are a little salty about that. And in general, it's not a great time to be David Zaslav in Hollywood. He's got a lot of negative buzz.
Oh, did you see him getting booed? He gave, did you see this clip?
Boston University,
we'll insert the clip right here.
I have the honor to present David Zaslav for Boston University's honorary degree.
He was at Boston University, and the graduating class chanted, "Pay your writers."
I feel like the launch comes at a bad time for them, but I don't think people are that upset about just the idea of Discovery content teaming with HBO Max content. And I think that, I think they're right in some ways that this is a more well-rounded catalog now, whereas HBO Max before leaned in favor of prestige shows, stuff that appeals to people like me who love HBO, that kind of peak TV content. This now has a ton more family stuff. It's got a ton more reality TV, unscripted, documentary.
But if I click the HBO
shows,
button, I'm in the HBO world. So just like when I'm in the Disney app, I click the Star Wars button or the Marvel button, I'm in that world. And I don't have to see the other stuff. You can still find
your HBO stuff. You can still find your Warner Brothers movies and your Harry Potter films and whatever.
There's some HBO show that was at Cannes that they're saying it's like about a pop star or something, but it's kind of like the new Euphoria or something. Yeah.
It's actually,
I think it was Hank Azaria in it or somebody.
Yeah. Yes, Hank Azaria is in it, I believe.
Cool. I love Hank.
Sam Levinson, who created Euphoria. He's Barry Levinson, Rain Man director Barry Levinson's son. He co-created it with The Weeknd, the guy who sings Blinding Lights and the R&B singer.
They're saying it's got some shocking scenes in it. Shocking.
It's very divisive, very controversial. The setup is The Weeknd plays this guy who's a club owner in LA and also like a weird like cult leader guru. And this young pop star, Lily Rose Depp, Johnny Depp's daughter.
Oh yeah, she's great.
She plays this up and coming pop star who kind of falls into his web of influence and sort of he becomes like kind of this Svengali kind of force in her life, controlling her.
Wait a second, so wasn't this like Kesha? Didn't the artist Kesha have somebody who was an abusive person?
Dr. Luke, I believe, is that guy's name, the producer? Yes. I mean, there are lots of weird power dynamic Hollywood music industry kinds of stories that I think this is playing off of. But it apparently the show is pretty sexually explicit and really dives into a lot of the domination, submission kind of themes, and it's been very controversial so far. And Rolling Stone also published an expose about how it was kind of a wild, out of control set and very chaotic.
Well, that's what they said about Euphoria, is that there was some uncomfortableness on the Euphoria set as well. So I guess if you're
these are
pushing the envelope
that have plagued Sam Levinson.
Yeah, if you're pushing the envelope on some of this content,
Right.
Interesting. I mean, Euphoria is terrifying. It's terrifying as a parent.
I'd imagine. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, just like kids doing.
Too.
Yeah, and just kids doing like really things kids shouldn't be doing. And you're like, I guess some kids are doing things they shouldn't be doing, but this is really pushing the envelope. Spotify.
It always feels to me like that Larry Clark stuff. You remember like Kids, that 90s movie Kids, and he did Bully and a few others where it's like nobody's saying that this is not happening at all. There are definitely kids like this, but it also kind of exists to be this sort of salacious, exploitative, like make you afraid for the children.
Yeah, it seems like it's a playbook of like, this is going to terrorize parents, and it's going to create some, I guess, PR or whatever, or it could just be buzz, or it could just be artistically what they want to pursue, in the way Scorsese wanted to pursue Taxi Driver. I guess it was, in some ways, people said the same thing about Taxi Driver. People said the same thing about Pulp Fiction, which has essay in it, which you use, I guess.
Yeah, Taxi Driver got booed at Cannes for the violence. People were very disturbed by that final sequence where De Niro,
which is just everybody's, and that was black and white, right? If I'm correct, and so
I think some of it is, I think you're right.
I think it's black and white, so they kind of tried to obscurify it a bit. Pretty interesting news in the podcasting space, which affects me, so I want to bring it up. Spotify reportedly developing bots to mimic your favorite hosts. And so Bill Simmons, founder of The Ringer, Spotify purchased it for over $200 million, I understand. And he has a new show with Derek Thompson, who's kind of a cool podcast host and thinker. And here's a clip of Bill discussing this with the change.
I'm glad you brought this up because I don't think Spotify is going to get mad at me for this. Like, we're developing that stuff, and there is going to be a way to use my voice for the ads. You have to obviously give the approval for the voice, but it opens up from an advertising standpoint all of these different great possibilities for, you could have localized, let's say we did a thing with like a ticket resale or something like that. You could geo-target that for each city. The more interesting thing for me with that is, could you take my podcast, like me and House and Jacoby talking about Game 2 Lakers Nuggets, which will be right before this part of the podcast. Could they take that and make AI Spanish version of it? Could they put it in French? Could the AI people, could they take the translations and just quickly take our voices and just make a podcast in 35 languages?
And the answer to that is yes. We've been pitched on it by tons of startups already. So this podcast could be in 10 languages, but they would take our voices, Lon.
Here's my chief concern would be what happens when an advertiser contacts The Ringer and says, "Hey, in this one episode, your host says this about our company. We don't like that. We find that offensive. Can you go and edit that and make him say something else?"
Yes.
If you've already signed off and said The Ringer's allowed to edit my voice with AI, what's stopping them from putting words in my mouth?
Yeah, this has got to be against the rules and the contracts. Luckily, I own and produce my own podcast, but that's a big one.
Right. You in your situation there, you don't have a producer who would come in and take the reign. But if I'm on a Ringer show, I don't own that show.
There's an opportunity for me, which is if I misspoke and I said, "Oh, they have 1 billion subscribers," and it was really like, "Oh, they have 1 million subscribers." In post-production, if my team came to me and said, "Hey, we're just going to have the AI have you say millions," she said billions by accident, and fix it, great. Yeah. I would be okay with that, but
that's what's so fascinating about these things is it's always both sides of the coin. We can always think of a scenario where like, oh, this would be super helpful. I totally get like Bill Simmons could put his podcast all around the world and it's his voice and it sounds like him and people get to know him instead of a guest host or a translator.
I want to be big in Japan,
Yeah. Everybody understands the immediate appeal of an idea like that. But then there's the flip side of like, but then what's stopping, him from going to somebody else's show and saying, you know what? I think he's unfair to Fast 10. I'm going to have his review be a little bit warmer.
It's funny too, because like I was thinking about the ad reads and I was thinking, gosh, like one of the, chores of a podcaster's life, you have to do your chores in life is Bill Simmons reads a lot of ads. And Bill Simmons has to read a lot of ads because he's the figurehead. He will read ads for other shows in the network. And I'm sure that's got to take a couple hours a week for him. And I bet you there's more advertisers who want to do custom things. So I could do an ad for, whatever, Toyota. But if it was, like I said, if it's in New York, I could say, and call, Jimmy at, Brooklyn Toyota, number 444-555-1212 and be like, wow. Jimmy got a custom ad and they'll pay an extra 10% for that. That would be dope. And then if he didn't have to read it.
Like when you used to listen to like Howard Stern and every time they'd have a celebrity come in, they'd have them record like a bug, like for the radio station. Like you wouldn't have to have people come in and do that. You could just call their people and be like, "Hey, can we use Snoop Dogg's voice to say you're listening to KLSX?" And they'd be like, "Sure." You don't need to bother these people. And Like even Ryan Reynolds helps us out sometimes for Honest Trailers. Like he's recorded,
really?
as Deadpool. He'll do voiceover for us. He's such a nice guy. He's really great at helping us out.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have to bother Ryan Reynolds, the person, anymore to like sneak off into the corner and record some Deadpool audio on your phone for us. He could just say, yeah, here's an AI Deadpool. You can have him say whatever you want.
I mean, can you imagine if like
it already
I
exists?
could speak in Arabic and people could listen to this show in the UAE? I just got back from Dubai in the UAE and like, wow.
I mean, that tech already exists. You could already basically make a celebrity say whatever you want. Like I've heard.
People are doing it with me already.
Stuff.
Yeah, people are having these. I mean, there was somebody who created an all-in thing where you could take any pop culture song, like a hip hop song, and then have us sing it.
Sure.
And like one of them has like the N-word in it. And I'm like, oh guys, this is not like.
It's
please.
I think one thing like that sounded so scary, but I think that AI in some ways it's become so big that I feel like there is more awareness than I expected. Like I feel like people are already a little more cynical than maybe they would have been about. Like
people assume
really
all
Joe
of this
Biden?
Stuff is fake. Yeah, no, it's not Joe.
Yeah,
it's
like
so
there was
clear.
that kid in Beau is Afraid. Yeah. Did you see this? The young Joaquin Phoenix. They cast an actor to play teenage Joaquin Phoenix in Beau is Afraid. A real young man. Mm-hmm. But people assume that it's a deep fake, because he looks a lot like young Joaquin Phoenix. Mm. And so this kid did interviews where he's like, no, I'm real. I'm not an AI cartoon of Joaquin Phoenix's de-aged face. I'm a real young man. So yeah, people are assuming things are AI that aren't even AI.
Yeah, I think that's like people are adapting to this.
Yeah.
And so that is a smart move, is like it's an adaptation. As we wrap here, I've been seeing these commercials for The Flash, and I'm kind of getting hyped up to see it with my kids. It's going to be the best DC film in a while.
It's gotten a lot of very it was a real troubled production. Everybody, Ezra Miller has been getting negative headlines, and they're a kind of a problematic person. And the production was a very elongated, troubled production. So the fact that it's not a disaster is like kind of a minor miracle anyway. But no, the buzz has been pretty strong. Yeah, people saw it this week. I think they let some fans see it, and the fans are losing their minds. Yes. CinemaCon was where it debuted, and it got a lot of positive buzz, and now more fans have seen it. And yeah, the reviews have all been strong. I think people are really hyped to get Michael Keaton back as Batman. I think that's a touchstone movie for a lot of people around my age.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. I'm excited.
89 Batman, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the multiverse just lets you play, and as we've seen. And then this next Marvel volley of, is it going to be good? What do you think? Your expectations? The next Marvel phase, is it going to be good or not?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Like Kang Dynasty, everything. Yeah. They got a lot to figure out. I really loved Guardians 3, the new one that's out right now.
It's good. Yeah.
I really like that one. I feel like they've been in kind of an off. I haven't been as into the Marvel movies lately. It's starting to get a little sort of generic and tropey, and everything is filmed in that.
Yeah, I feel repetitive.
And they're shooting everything in that volume, that one green screen room they've got.
Yeah, that's not
everything
good.
Kind of a samey, boring look.
Video
but I think
game.
Guardians, James Gunn did a really nice job with it. It has an emotional core that they haven't had in a while. So I think if they can lean into that, I think that sets them up pretty well. But
I'm excited for X-Men and Fantastic Four, because I love those two groups. So that could be, but that's after the Kang stuff, right? Or is that towards the end of the Kang? They'll have those people start showing up?
I think that's towards the end. So we'll do the Kang stuff, and then that will probably introduce the Fantastic Four, and then we'll get a standalone Fantastic Four movie, I think, in 2025? Something like that. 25 or 26.
All right. So your recommendation for this show, Silo. Everybody go check out Silo. Anything else that's hot? And I know the Bear season 2 is coming back.
The Bear season 2 in June. We also get a new season of Black Mirror in June on Netflix, which is cool.
Oh, that could
finally
be
long awaited.
How long has that been? I forgot that. I thought they just shut that down.
It's been about 3 years, I think, since he came back and did any Black Mirrors. It was that interactive one, Bandersnatch or whatever. I think that was the last new Black Mirror.
Yeah,
but we've got a big new season with lots of, like Salma Hayek's in it. Aaron Paul is in it. And I think it looks like the Aaron Paul one is a continuation of USS Callister, the Jesse Plemons Star Trek one.
Okay, so that's dope. If you can start having some continuation of those stories, man, that makes that anthology series really interesting.
Charlie Brooker's been teasing that it's going to be more like the Black Mirror verse, and episodes are going to start interacting with other episodes, which is cool.
Oh,
and then I think you should leave. We get more Netflix. I think you should leave next week.
What is that? I think you should
Tim
leave.
Robinson comedy sketch show on Netflix. It's where all the memes come from.
Oh, Tim that Robinson, guy who's like the guy who says, really?
Yeah. Or in the hot dog suit. That's Tim Robinson. He was a Saturday Night Live writer. And now he has his own Netflix sketch show.
98%. I've never seen it.
Unbelievable. Funniest show.
Is it really good?
Huh. Oh my God. So good. So there's 2 seasons now. It's 15-minute episodes and there's only 6 per season. So it's like a movie every few years, but so it's somewhere between
a Saturday Night Live episode and TikTok. And it's kind of made to go viral on TikTok.
It's just short comedy sketches and they're all and basically the whole show has gone viral at this point.
I realized something about TikTok and how pernicious it is. I think it is ruining people's lives in that every single clip, because there's people starting to put movies on there or like Best of the Sopranos. So my feed is like food and Best of Sopranos clips. And then I because I watched a Breaking Bad clip, now I get a bunch of Breaking Bad clips. And what I realize they're doing is they're just firing your dopamine, whatever the great moments were in a season of a show. They fire off your dopamine, which then fries your brain. So after an hour or two of watching the best of clips, which in a way YouTube did, you get like into the Sopranos clips on YouTube and it's kind of nice. What this does is it ruins I think it fries your dopamine receptors because you're seeing some fight. That's a race fight, typically. You see some Karens. Then you see some great scenes from The Sopranos. Then you see a shark attack. Then you see some incredible piece of food. What it's doing is it's hitting your limbic system and it's hitting your dopamine receptors. And it's just frying you out. And you don't need that much. And it's like this is doing too much damage to your dopamine receptors. I honestly think that this is messing up. And I think that's what the algorithm is doing, this, visual crack hits. And it's bad for you because it ruins art. And then I think it makes people anxious and it resets you. So you're only, you're only, and I'm trying to in real time frame this for people. I think what it's doing is it's just giving you these like little mini hits without giving you the context around them, without letting them breathe a little bit. And it's very bad for you. I think this is ruining.
I don't think our brains are designed to process this amount of input and stimulus and information all day. And I mean, even just like the news, used to be like you'd wake up in the morning and read the paper, you'd get home from work and there'd be like a half hour of news. And like, that was it. That was all the news. And now we're just flooded 24/7 with headlines and opinions and this news and that news. And our brains aren't made to process that amount. And I think it's the same with TikTok. And I read a thing about how young people are using TikTok as a search engine now. Like instead of going to Google and searching whatever you're looking for, you just hit it into TikTok and then quickly scan through videos until somebody is talking about what you're looking for. And like, that seems like such a chaotic, brain-frying way to engage with the world. I can't even imagine thinking that's easier than just typing it into a search engine. It's just a totally different way for your brain to be organized.
This is a Pavlovian, dystopian technique that was codified, exemplified in a very famous, disturbing film from 50 years ago that some people think is one of the most, like, at the time was considered one of the most disturbing scenes in a film. The film was called The Clockwork Orange.
They've got his eyes pried open, and they're forcing him to watch ultra-violence.
Pry his eyes open, and they make him watch horrible stuff, like ultra-violent stuff, to try to do this aversion therapy where they shock him when he sees violence because he's a violent person.
Right.
It's kind of what we're doing to ourselves. And I think this is why, like, this stuff should not be, or kids should not be doing this. And I see kids sometimes, Lon, friends, whatever, people in our orbit, and they're on this iPhone. They get this iPhone 13, 14, 15 years old, and they're on TikTok, and they're curled up in a ball. And it looks like Clockwork Orange to me. That's what I see. Yeah. That's what I see.
No, and I'm always so hyper aware of being like the old guy who's like, it's too much. I get it. And like for them, it doesn't seem like too much stimulus, and it's just natural to browse the internet that way. I get it. But yeah, it does give me pause for sure. The just constant nonstop feed of information. I think it kills your attention span, your ability to focus on stuff.
And what I've started to do now is when I watch something I love, like Succession, I just put my phone in the other room and charge it. Put it on airplane mode.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to miss scenes. I don't want to miss moments.
If you talk about film and TV on the internet a lot, as I do, you start to notice that people don't always notice everything in the movies and shows that they've watched. And I think part of that, too, is that they don't even know that they're missing stuff because they're on their phone. Like there'll be visually something is revealed in a movie and people are missing it because they were not watching the screen at that exact moment. So I do think it's changing the way Twitter we watch or they're playing
chess. But for me, it's like playing chess.
You don't even think of it, No,
I was playing, I'm playing Blitz chess while watching a TV show. And I'm like, well, which am I doing? What am I doing here? Like, am I playing Blitz chess or am I watching the movie?
Yeah, you're sort of doing both, but at 60% instead of 100%.
Yeah, and it's just not a good experience because my chess rating's going down and I'm missing the great moments. All right, this has been Lon Harris. Follow him on Twitter, twitter.com/Lons, inside.com/streaming. Any other plugs for Lon? Where else can we find you?
Binge Boys. Check out my podcast, Binge Boys. Hal Rudnick and I watch whatever's going on in streaming and review it. We're talking about Silos.
All right. Oh, Silo this week. Can't wait. Binge Boys. Okay, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.